The day the judge declared me legally dead, my child was sitting 10 feet away, coloring dinosaurs and calling me Mom. Nobody screamed. Nobody gasped. The gavel came down like it was just another Tuesday. I remember thinking, so this is it. This is how I disappear. I wasn't always invisible. I used to be the woman everyone envied, the one who married into money, moved into a glass-walled house in the hills, and smiled through charity galas like life had handed me a winning ticket. My husband wore tailored suits and a CEO title like armor. His family owned half the city through shell companies and old money favors. From the outside, I was safe. Inside that house, I was property. It started small. It always does. Why do you need your own account? I'll handle the bills. It's easier. Don't embarrass us by asking questions. By the time I realized my salary was being rerouted, my credit cards were flagged, and my name had quietly vanished from every asset. I was already pregnant. That's when the control turned surgical. His mother scheduled my doctor appointments. His sister kept my medical records. His lawyer cousin showed up at dinner like he belonged there. They weren't hiding it anymore. They were organizing. The night I overheard them talking about my child, I didn't cry. I went cold. Kids are easier to shape when they're young, my mother-in-law said, swirling wine like she was discussing real estate. He won't be like her, my husband replied. We'll make sure of that. That was the moment I understood. I wasn't the endgame. I was the incubator. I went to the police. I brought texts, bank statements, recordings I wasn't supposed to have. The officer skimmed them, then looked at my last name and sighed. This is a civil matter. I went to court. I filed motions. I begged for protection. Their lawyers smiled like sharks who already smelled blood. Evidence disappeared. Witnesses forgot. My credibility was questioned. Hormones, stress, postpartum anxiety. Then came the final hearing. They argued I was unstable, unfit, a risk to my own child. Their solution? Full guardianship, supervised contact, complete financial control. The judge looked at me like he was tired. Miss Carter, he said, you've lost. What he didn't know was that I had already decided something worse than losing. If the law wouldn't let me live as a mother, I would let it kill me instead. As the gavel hit, I leaned down, kissed my child's hair, and whispered a promise that would change everything. They can't take you from a dead woman. And that was the first step of a plan I hadn't told anyone. A plan that would erase my name, burn their power to the ground, and make sure my child never knew what it cost me to save them. Because my death was only the beginning. You don't disappear overnight. You bleed out slowly on paper. The court didn't just take my child. It took my name, my accounts, my access. Overnight, I became a ghost with a pulse. Supervised visits only. No unscheduled calls. No interference. They called it protection. I called it a countdown. That's when I met the woman who taught me how to die. She wasn't a lawyer. She wasn't a cop. She ran a one-room office above a pawn shop and charged cash only. People said she fixed documents. What she really did was untangle lives the system had already decided to crush. She looked at my file, then at my face. You want out, she said. Not a question. I want my child safe, I told her. She nodded. Then your name can't survive. We started with the basics. Birth certificates, employment history, utility bills. Everything that proved I existed, we reversed it. Errors corrected. Misspellings standardized. Addresses updated. It was boring, meticulous work. Death by 1,000 forms. The harder part was letting go of being seen. I stopped answering calls, stopped correcting people when they got my name wrong. I moved into a studio where nobody asked questions and paid rent and money orders. I learned to keep my head down, my mouth shut, and my receipts filed. Then came the day we staged it. A hospital visit, a clerical mix-up, a death certificate issued to the wrong Emily Carter with the right social trail. No body, no funeral, just enough confusion to make it permanent. By the time anyone noticed, the file was closed. Legally, I was dead. They threw a party. I watched the photos online, champagne flutes, my husband's arm around the woman he'd been seeing for months. The caption said something about new beginnings. My stomach twisted, but I didn't flinch, because I wasn't grieving. I was working. I took jobs under the table, learned which accountants cut corners and which bankers talked too much. I listened more than I spoke. People underestimate a quiet woman with a cheap coat. That was my advantage. I followed the money. Not directly, never directly. Shell companies, trusts, foundations that helped children while siphoning millions. And there it was, hiding in plain sight, my child's trust, funded by my family line, managed by his. They weren't just controlling my kid, they were living off him. I documented everything. Screenshots, paper trails, recorded calls where they forgot who they were talking to. I built a case brick by brick while they slept easy, thinking the problem had solved itself. But the night I uncovered the final transfer, the one that proved intent, I realized something terrifying. They weren't done. They were planning to move my child out of state. New schools, new guardians, new name, a clean break. That's when I knew my death had bought time but not safety. And if I didn't move next, my child would disappear the way I did, without a choice. Fear is useful. That's the first thing you learn when you stop running and start hunting. I let them think I was gone for good. No sightings, no mistakes, no rumors, just a dead woman and a clean victory. They got sloppy after that. Rich people always do when they think the threat is buried. I didn't rush. Rushing gets you caught. Instead, I rebuilt myself piece by piece. New name, new haircut, new posture. I learned how to speak less, listen more. I took a job filing records at a mid-size firm, the kind that handled corporate compliance no one ever reads. I wasn't there to climb. I was there to watch. That's when the cracks started showing. My husband's company wasn't as clean as it looked. Deferred taxes, temporary loans pulled from charitable trusts, internal emails written like jokes until you read them twice. I copied everything, not all at once, just enough to stay invisible. At night, I drove past my child's school. I never got close. I memorized schedules, drop-offs, security patterns, which teachers stayed late, which guards checked their phones too much. I told myself it was preparation, not desperation. The woman living in my old house, the mistress-turned-wife, posted everything online. Designer bags, weekend getaways, a baby shower with a caption about finally becoming a mom. I almost laughed. She had no idea whose money paid for the cake. I started feeding information quietly. Anonymous tips, questions framed like mistakes. I nudged auditors toward the right documents. I tipped a journalist who owed a favor to a banker who talked too much. Every move looked unrelated. Every thread led back to the same knot. Then I did the most dangerous thing of all. I showed my face. Not to them. To the court. Under a different name. I filed a routine complaint, nothing explosive. Just enough to trigger a review. They dismissed it at first. Of course they did. Powerful families don't fall from whispers. But whispers turn into patterns. The review uncovered irregularities. The irregularities led to subpoenas. The subpoenas made people nervous. And nervous people make mistakes. That's when my husband called the emergency board meeting. That's when his lawyers started digging not into the company, but into the past. Into me. They wanted to be sure the dead stayed buried. The night I realized they were getting close, I sat alone in my car and finally let myself shake. Not because I was scared for me, but because if they connected the dots, my child would be leverage. I had one move left. One shot. And it meant stepping into a courtroom again. Not as a ghost, but as the woman who had been watching them the whole time. They thought the case was about money. They had no idea it was about custody. The courtroom felt smaller this time. Same flags. Same seal on the wall. Same kind of men in expensive suits pretending they weren't sweating. But I wasn't sitting at the defendant's table anymore. I wasn't begging. I wasn't explaining myself. I was just present. Under my new name, I testified as a financial compliance analyst. Clean resume, verified credentials, boring enough to be trusted. I walked the court through timelines, transfers, shell accounts, and trust fund withdrawals, so calmly the judge leaned forward without realizing it. No emotion, no drama, just facts. When the opposing attorney tried to object, the judge shut him down. Let her finish. That's when I knew it was over. The evidence stacked itself. My child's trust had been used as a private credit line. Mortgage payments, corporate bailouts, Personal expenses hidden under educational administration fees. The court-appointed auditor confirmed intent. Not an accident. Not ignorance. Exploitation. My husband didn't look at me at first. When he finally did, his face went white, not because he recognized me, but because he recognized the trap. He knew whoever built this had known him intimately. He was right. The ruling came down fast. Accounts frozen. Guardianship revoked. Criminal referrals issued. The judge used words like egregious and systematic abuse, words that don't leave room for spin. And then came custody. A new guardian was appointed temporarily, someone neutral, someone safe, someone I had quietly vetted months earlier. The court praised the recommendation, said it showed remarkable foresight. I nodded like it was just my job. Outside the courtroom, reporters swarmed. Cameras flashed. Questions flew. Do you have a comment? Who uncovered this? Was this personal? I kept walking. I didn't give them a name. I didn't give them a story. I didn't give them me, because the truth was simpler than revenge. I didn't do this to destroy them. I did it to end the cycle. Weeks later, I watched my child from across a park, laughing, safe, free, calling the woman beside him Mom, without knowing how many versions of that word I had burned to protect him. One day, if he ever asks, I'll tell him this, that sometimes love doesn't look like winning. Sometimes it looks like disappearing. Sometimes it looks like letting the world think you lost, so your child never has to fight at all. The court declared me dead. They were wrong. I just chose not to live under their name anymore.